Hello, how are you now? I'm James Whelan, occasional talking head for smallcaps.com.au, and you are joined here today on Small Caps. We're speaking with Livium Limited, ASX code LIT, an Australian clean energy company focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries, solar panels and rare earth elements through its leading market subsidiary. I'm just going to do the spiel. Here we go. Simon, stick with me. Through its market-leading subsidiary, EnviroStream, Livium is tackling one of the fastest growing environmental challenges of our time, the responsible recovery of critical materials from clean energy waste. And joining us to talk about the company's growth strategy, who loves the way that I read all those 13 years in grammar school, recent partnerships, $4.5 million capital raise, is Managing Director and CEO Simon Ling. Simon, how are you now?
I'm very well. Yourself, James?
You could tell the chirpy demeanour is fantastic. Happy to tell the story and happy for another amazing week ahead. So, Simon, again, thank you for joining us. And to start things off, for viewers who may not be familiar with Livium, can you please give us a quick overview of who you are and what Livium does?
Well, Livium really is a recycler of clean energy waste, and that's certainly how we're stepping into that. Where the principal business that we have is EnviroStream. It's Australia's leading end-of-life lithium-ion battery recycler. But we've just recently announced a stepping out into near adjacencies for that business around rare earth elements, recycling out of magnets, but also into solar panels. We have a couple of other technologies that we've been developing over the last few years as well. And we've got those to really important inflection points, which now allow us to think about monetizing or taking the next step of value for those technologies, particularly one that works at lithium mining extraction level and improving yields. And that's got a joint development agreement, now joint JV with Mineral Resources. And then another, which is about battery materials, which we're one of the few people outside of China with capability to make a cathode active material. That's the stuff that goes inside a battery at the positive end. Our main business, our core business, is being a recycler of lithium-ion batteries.
Good overview. Well done. Now, your recent presentation gave a compelling picture of the clean energy waste opportunity. Can you walk us through the scale of the problem you're addressing and how Livium fits into the solution?
Yeah, so we've been really pleased with where EnviroStream's been able to go over the last two and a half years. We've gone from being a loss-making business into cash flow positive and now profitability. We're now seeing that business really take the next step, and we're doing that off very nascent volumes of end-of-life lithium-ion batteries. If we look at the addressable market today for batteries that need to be recycled, we're talking about 5,000 tonnes. But if you fast forward to the end of this decade, it's suddenly 20,000 tonnes to 25,000 tonnes. You fast forward to 2035, that's over 100,000 tonnes. In dollar terms, we're taking an addressable market today of $20 million. By the end of the decade, $150 million. By 2035, 10 years from now, we're talking about $500 million. You go a decade beyond that and you're talking over $2 billion. So we're really excited about where we're at and the opportunity, that the demand profile that's in front of the business. As we look at these adjacencies, though, I mean, rare earth magnets, permanent magnets are in wind turbines, they're in electric motors, they're in consumer electronics, lots of which are now coming to end of life. And we really think there's an opportunity there to play our part in recovery of rare earth elements, which very, very much in flavour today, but I think will be, again, for the long term as well, as the deficit in rare earth elements becomes greater over time. And then solar panels, we've got over 100 million solar panels in Australia today that will all come to end of life, many of which the first generations are coming to end of life now. And there's a great opportunity with extraction out of those PV cells for the silver and silicon that's in there. So we're getting great opportunities in front of us.
Yeah, I can see that. And obviously, and with the geopolitical climate as it is right now, the recovery area is going to become more and more important, as opposed to depending on one particular country slightly to the north of us having to be the sole 78% of the digging out of the earth. So now, I did hear the word profitability. Now, my ears always trigger up a little bit like that, Simon. Now, you recently reported a strong year for the company. What were the key highlights for FY25?
Look, for 25, certainly a highlight for us was seeing the EnviroStream business move into its maiden profit. Still very nascent, still small, but to have gone transition from loss-making to cash flow positive to profitability was a real testament to the team and what they've been able to achieve on the back of a lot of hard work, including signing up, a range of new clients, BYD, Hyundai, Volvo, and the list goes on. Hythium, a big grid installer of batteries. So really a lot of hard work, changing the economic model that we've gone forward with those clients to get us into profitability. That was certainly a highlight for us. But I think also being able to move forward with what was then our joint development agreement with Mineral Resources, completing piloting around that technology called LENA on extraction. We finished that piloting, finished engineering studies, and that's allowed us in July of this year to formulate, or August of this year, should I say, to formulate a joint venture with Mineral Resources around that technology. So really important work through 25. And the balance of that was really in the SPC, our cathode active materials business, being able to get a $30 million grant from the Australian government for the development and scale up of that technology. And so really pleased with how those technologies have got to the inflection point. But really, EnviroStream being able to turn into profitability gave us the confidence to be able to say, look, let's build this business. Let's start to step into those near adjacencies around rare earth elements and solar panels, and really orientate the business to be a clean energy waste recycling business.
Perfect. Outstanding response there, Simon. Now, you did mention solar panels and rare earth recycling as well. Is there anything more that you wanted to go into with regards to those partnerships?
Yeah, we've recently announced to the market that we've entered into some partnerships. If I look at rare earth elements, we've been very excited by a technology that's out of the University of Melbourne. When we've looked and we've been asked to look at these areas as much as we've been excited by them, but by our clients. So out of those that are dealing with electric motors, out of EVs, but also out of wind turbines, where you've got permanent magnets in those motors, in those wind turbines. Clients are asking us to look at it. We have done. And we really think the secret to success around rare earth element extraction is being high yield rates, obviously, as you look to pull out the key rare earth elements that are in magnets, but also, as always, be low on the cost curve. And how are you low on the cost curve in this sort of extraction methodology? Is low energy. And so the University of Melbourne has got a microwave technology that looks like it's got really high yield rates of 90+%. And because it's microwave technology, low energy. And when we look at others in the marketplace today who are getting, a fair amount of attention, their yield rates are in the 60s to 70%, but they're using a lot of energy to unlock those rare earth elements. So we think this University of Melbourne technology is really exciting, and that's a key cornerstone technology that we're looking at for rare earth elements. We will look at others as well, because we think there's a pretty open field in the technology space here. On solar panels, we've entered into 2 agreements recently, one with a South Korean company called Wonkwang S&T. They're a maker of machinery that helps disassemble and delaminate a solar panel and do that really efficiently and effectively. And so we've entered into a phased agreement with them to bring their machinery into Australia to start that delamination and disassembly process. And why is that important? Well, you need to be able to do it efficiently. So we think that means getting through 3 solar panels a minute at the least, and also make sure that you do it effectively, so you minimize contamination between the glass in the solar panel and the PV cells. And at the moment, a lot of processes have high contamination rates. The low contamination lets you get to high yield rates out of those PV cells. And so we've just now entered into a binding agreement with Iron Drive, who are an ASX listed company, using their DES extraction technology to extract out the silicon and the silver at high yield rates out of those PV cells. So we're really excited about what we might be able to do with Iron Drive. We think we've got the right combination on solar panels with Wonkwang and their efficiency at the front end of bringing the panel in and getting it ready for pre-processing, and then Iron Drive for being able to do that extraction. Iron Drive will also help us look at the extraction of the pre-processed battery materials as well, which the industry calls black mass, and using that same technology to be able to get some benefits out of the black mass and add value to that by getting to battery salts again. So really, those 3 cornerstone agreements over the last few months really set us up to step into those adjacencies in solar panels and rare earth elements.
Yeah, it is good. And I remember having a discussion with Iron Drive with regards to the DES technology too. It's phenomenal. So that's a partnership that'll match up quite well. at least from
Absolutely.
my outside opinion on this one. So really well done, Simon, on that. Now, again, with more good news, we don't come here for bad news, but sometimes it does come up. But this is a good news. So this one, you've just completed a successful $4.5 million placement. Always nice. Million with an it was more than twice oversubscribed. Very well done. What's the strategy behind the raise? Where are the funds going to go?
Yeah, so the funds are principally around accelerating the growth of the EnviroStream business, principally around the battery recycling business, but also helping us step into those adjacencies. The key areas for us in that battery recycling growth strategy is we've grown reasonably fast over the last few years in our volumes, and we now operate across 2 sites. And we want to bring those 2 sites back into 1 site with a bit of future proofing, both in volumes and the introduction of some of the technologies I've mentioned into a single site. The team call that a super site. I tend to call it a hub. And so really the money will go towards that hub, but also helping us step into some spokes. So pre-collection, sorting activities in places that are a bit distant from our Victorian operations, so particularly WA and Queensland. But both of those areas would, in both of those states, would allow us to lower our cost base in terms of logistics. So that's really the focus of where the $4.5 million goes. So we were really delighted with the level of support that investors and new investors were prepared to show us. And as you said, we were well oversubscribed, which is always a little bit hard to say no to money, but we only need the funds that we need to be able to progress, and we wanted to make sure that we were being prudent in the way we use investor and shareholder money.
Absolutely. Always good to leave a little bit for the next guy too. I think a little bit on the sidelines and some support from the market, which is good. Yeah, to a lot of greedy people out there to see the big number and take it. So it's often a curse more than a credit. Okay, now looking ahead, what should investors be looking out for from Livium over the next 6 to 12 months?
Look, really more news around what we're doing around the EnviroStream business, continuing to bring in contracts and volumes into that business for the core battery recycling activity. It's taking the first steps on that hub build out that I mentioned just before, as well as looking at activities around the spokes, but principally around volumes into the core battery business and stepping into that hub. On the near adjacencies around rare earth elements, you'll see we'll be doing some further announcements for the University of Melbourne around formalisation of documentation, but really that first piloting program with them at the next stage of development for the technology. And then with solar panels, really our first phase of shipments into Wonquan to validate the effectiveness of their machinery at scale, but also news out of our relationship with Iron Drive and some testing of the solar panels and PV cells there and what recovery rates we're getting out of the silicon and silver out of that area. But importantly, also probably watch a little bit more news for us on the rare earth space as well as we look to build out some further relationships around rare earth magnets and rare earth materials.
Okay, well, plenty to see ahead. I'm very keen to hear more about the University of Melbourne conversation. That does sound something fascinating. It could actually change the world and is already changing the world in this way.
It will.
Simon, thanks. That's the way. Simon, thank you very much for joining us. It sounds like Livium really is at the intersection of clean energy and critical materials recovery. We'll be watching closely as you expand into these new markets.
Thanks, James. Great to be with you.
Not a problem at all. Simon Ling of Limited, and I am James Whelan, and you are watching smallcaps.com.au.